Thank you for coming, everybody. I'm still in the process of kind of getting oriented in these slides, so this is going to be a fresh experience for all of us. Welcome to Cybersecurity Hardware Hacking. As you can tell, we are remote, so hardware hacking, more like hardly hacking. No, but I don't really have. My original plan for this workshop was to give you an interactive component, but it looks like we'll have to save that for the fall. Oh, wait, no. I guess the winter now. Or maybe the spring. Or maybe 2023. I don't know. Somewhere around then might be when we finally get to have this workshop in person. Okay, sorry. All right, I'll stop. Thank you for coming. Welcome to Hardware Hacking. I got a haircut. I'm wearing a suit. This is going to be badass. Let's do this. I forget what's on the first slide. And I also need to get the window in focus for this to work. Whoops, that goes backward, that goes forward. So in the original version of this presentation, it was over 120 megabytes of just sheer information, sheer quality. Actually, it was like the size of two 1080p videos being literally shoved inside of the PowerPoint. That was why it was so huge. I'm proud to announce that in the newest version, we have become more efficient. The PowerPoint is a fraction of the original size. So, yay for efficiency. This describes my creative process pretty good. This is literally the same slide from the original presentation. Really, I made a copy of the original hardware hacking slides, but I updated it a little bit. Also, look there in the bottom left-hand corner, and you will see some of the new branding, kind of. Probably a work in progress, but I tried to incorporate that into the colors of these slides and into the overall vibe, among other things. Let me know how it looks. All right. Now, we have to start with a very, very important question that is, of course, prerequisite to any lecture on hardware hacking. And that is, have you ever been to, and the way you pronounce this word is Fuddruckers? It's an important question. Okay, we're getting the appropriate responses from the audience here. I don't know about good. Kendall has the right idea. It's aight. It's this place, and if this picture doesn't look appetizing to you, don't worry. You're not the only one. Let me just put it this way. My main reason for going was never the burgers. It looked a little bit like this, just kind of like greasy. Like you could tell from the front of the restaurant that the inside of it was greasy. Just every surface, not just the cooking surfaces. And what you'd usually get was the amazing food that you see here does not look like the picture. Not that you'd really want it to look like either. But here's the reason I would always go to a Fuddruckers. Yeah, that right there. They had like a little 3-machine arcade section, so to speak. You see that kid there? That was me, as far as I'm concerned. Like, I was there and usually forgot to eat. My parents would get like kind of mad at me. And I was like 5, so. At every arcade in America, and that goes for Fuddruckers, there were 3 essential arcade machines present at anywhere that had them. You have, of course, your like generic shooter, though usually if it was Time Crisis, that's how you know it was like a good arcade. Like the person running that arcade had like some good taste when it came to arcade machines. Love Time Crisis. You have your generic racing game. In my particular Fuddruckers, we had the Fast and Furious edition. And of course, the big daddy of arcade racks, we have the Miss Pac-Man and Galaga arcade rack that is like a combination between the two. This one's classic. I believe we have it in the UCSD game room over in Price Center. Not that I have been there in a very long time, but I know that it's there. And normally, if I was hosting this workshop in person, I would perhaps even say that maybe we should go on a field trip to visit it. So, because we couldn't go on a field trip to visit this particular arcade machine, it's time for a poll, real fast, by the way. Let me ask you this. Have you ever played Galaga? Because we're interested in the Galaga half of this machine. Let me go ahead and ask that poll. No, I didn't get distracted. I've never been distracted. Okay, poll, yes, no. Yes for Galaga, no for no Galaga. Hopefully all of us are cultured and have played Galaga. I'm seeing a lot of uncultured people in this poll response right now. I wouldn't say uncultured, just like not as cultured. It's fine. I'm not going to judge. You guys can't see the polling results, but it was about 50% yes and 50% the wrong answer. That's okay, though. We're going to work with it. It's very simple, standard 80s arcade machine-like style, just you shoot things, basically. But what's super important about everything I've talked about at this point is to introduce this arcade machine, the very specific Miss Pac-Man and Galaga arcade machine. As it turns out, that was the first hardware I ever hacked in my whole life, without even really knowing it. When I was in, I was maybe like 7, so maybe like 2nd grade or something, I went up to this machine and I hacked it, and it was the first piece of hardware I've ever hacked in my life. So let me show you exactly what I mean by that. And this was where the video was embedded in my presentation. Don't feel like you have to type this in. You do not. I'm going to force you all to watch it right now inside of the presentation. I can do that. Fun fact. Check this out. Check this out. All right, let's all watch it together. Oh man, what a dork. What a huge dork. Hopefully we all managed to get through that video at roughly the same speed. By the way, that video doesn't show up in the recording, which is why the link is there for when people want to watch the recording later. I just realized I probably should have paused the recording, because for people watching the recording, they just literally watch me like sit here and eat for like a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen again. Thank you for watching. There will be more like that in the future. So if I screen share the video, it's actually generally pretty smooth. The problem is that it doesn't natively support sharing the audio of the video, which is, of course, kind of necessary unless I wanted to re-narrate it, which I don't really want to do. Anyways, back to the slides here. Ta-da! Thank you for watching. So that is what I meant by that. It was the first arcade machine that I ever hacked in my life. Although, I don't know if you could call it hacking. It was more like I really wanted to play, but I didn't have any money because I was like 5. And I managed to break it, air quotes. It just resets itself, but I thought that was pretty interesting. And when I looked it up later, I found out there were other people who had noticed this phenomenon and recorded it and documented it and even like suggested bug fixes for it and stuff. So honestly, you don't have to be in CSE 12 to have bugs in your software. Let me just put it that way. I'd like to start the actual meat of this presentation with a quote, like I usually do. Sometimes hacking is just someone spending more time on something than anyone else might reasonably expect. The creators of the Pac-Man Galaga arcade machine didn't expect a 5-year-old to be so desperate to play it that he would just press buttons even though nothing was happening during the demo. But guess what happened? Anyways, does anyone know who said this quote? Anyone have any suggestions? Me? No, it was me. It was actually someone else this time. Abraham Lincoln. Yep. That was right. Good guesses, good guesses. Anyways, it is actually some guy on Twitter. Nice try. Thanks for playing. Okay, no, I'm joking. It is some guy on Twitter, but it's Jerry Gamblin, who, as you may all recognize, is some guy on Twitter. He's also kind of like into cybersecurity and stuff, and he is active in the community. I don't know. I thought this quote was very telling, and in line with the rest of the presentation. So anyways, you came to this presentation, perhaps ill-advised, to hear about cybersecurity, hardware hacking. But what does that even really mean? I mean, the choice of words isn't clear here. Wouldn't you agree that there's going to be two workshops happening here today? There's the one that's about hardware hacking, but then there's also one that's going to be about hacking hardware. That is, the first one is about the act of hacking hardware that exists to circumvent your attempts. And the second talks about hardware that is used for hacking, right? The hardware that hackers employ in their hacking. And I agreed that this was kind of vague, so I decided to talk about both topics here tonight. But we're going to start with, of course, the hacking hardware side of things. So we're going to talk about what hackers use to break into stuff. This will be interesting. So, apples and oranges, right? What's really the difference? When it comes to hardware hacking, there is a couple of different types. There's secure hardware hacking, where you're kind of interested in getting into a machine that will try to prevent you from doing that, right? It's the engineering of secure systems. There is the ECE kind of hardware hacking where you're like messing around with resistors and stuff, and you know, like I'm definitely not an ECE major, so I want to hold a presentation about that someday, but definitely going to have to co-host it, let me put it that way. And then of course there is hardware used for hacking, which is maybe something scary looking like this. I think that's like a couple of flash drives, some cords, a Raspberry Pi. Definitely something you might get questioned for if you brought that into an airport. You know, looks pretty cool. Anyways, so and more like there's three types, but we're really focusing on that last one for now. So here's hardware for hacking. I'd like to pose a question to you guys, right? This is a flash drive, as I'm sure you all recognize. You've all probably used one before. My question for you is, what is the worst thing that a malicious flash drive could do to your computer? Just purely hypothetical question. And I assume some of you are probably actually trying to say something in chat. Matei's a little bit ahead of me. Imagine a flash drive that is actually a storage device and not just a keyboard or a giant capacitor that's going to explode. Please don't post USB condoms in the chat. Oh, are those like actually for USB devices? Okay, got it. To help keep your computer safe. That's so funny. Anyways, here's a follow-up question. How long would it take for a person, when they plug a flash drive into your computer, to do something malicious with that? And to help answer that question, I have brought a poll. So quick question. I want you to say yes if you use the built-in Chrome password manager or the built-in Firefox password manager. My point is that just say whether or not you use the built-in one. It shouldn't be a majority of you. I'd be a little concerned. But a decent amount of you. I'm taking very careful notes about which people. All right. You can't see it, but it was roughly, oh God, I actually don't remember. It was like actually pretty good. Like I think about 40% of you guys said yes to this. So about 40% of you have said yes or save on this window. Now, I'm not leading into anything in particular, but let me just say after this next bit, you may reconsider that. All right. So here's a video about me versus Google Chrome. Again, I'm going to force you all to watch it directly in your browsers. So get ready for this fun fest. Let's share this video. And I'm going to let me, from approximately 6 months ago, talk about, maybe just demonstrate the side effects of using Chrome's password saver. Zoom recording. Whoops, almost got you. I was just testing you guys. No one warned me, so you guys failed. Here's the slides. Ta-da! Welcome back to the slides. So that was a little bit of a demonstration. I love doing that to people who use the Chrome password feature. I think it's really funny. Like, I don't really want their passwords, but I just like showing people their passwords. I think that is one of the highest privileges of a hacker, is being able to do that. Anyways, don't let me near your computer, and let's move on. So let's talk about, and we're going to shift gears here away from the whole Chrome password situation, right? That was just about flash drives as a storage medium, right? But the truth is that there is untapped potential for things that are flash drive shaped, that share this USB paradigm, but aren't necessarily storage, right? Let's talk about the great innovator of all of humanity, the thing that drives change and improvement over generations. That is to say, laziness, right? You know, every time a human wanted to be lazy, they innovated and created a way to achieve that. And the same goes here. Let's talk about Darren Kitchen. Darren Kitchen works in IT. And as an IT person, you do a lot of the same thing every day. Hi, the printer doesn't work. Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again? On and on and on. And it really just isn't fun. And I'm that's why I want to go more on the research side of cybersecurity, not the IT side. But that is beside the point. The point is that the same problems that occur on a daily basis in IT always require pretty much the same fixes. And he got tired of sitting down at a computer terminal and typing in the exact same thing day in, day out. So what he created was a little flash drive sized microcontroller. He had one, like, already there. And he realized that, and it's like kind of like an Arduino almost. You could think of it that way. Like, it has a little computer, so it's programmable, but it has a USB interface. And what he realized is that he could write keyboard drivers to it and create like something that will, when you plug it into a computer, tell the computer it's a keyboard and then type some commands really quickly. And this was just with the intention of, hey, I need to go type 50 lines into this computer terminal to fix the problem. I have the flash drive that will solve this problem. All I have to do is plug it in, and it types it, thousands of times faster than me, a mere human, would be. Now, this thing was kind of like unfashionable, right? Carrying around a little PCB. He felt like he was going to break it, so he needed some kind of like case or chassis for it. But he didn't have a plastic cover, and I guess he didn't have like a 3D printer to make one or something like that. So what he did have was a rubber ducky. So he stuck it inside of a rubber duck. And that is where the name USB rubber ducky came from. The science of automation. So let's talk a little bit about the USB rubber ducky, which is a very interesting tool. This was his this debugging process. First, you diagnose the broken PC. What's wrong with it? Then you grab the corresponding ducky from your collection of duckies. Once you have the proper ducky, you just slap it in, and it types up a bunch, and then the problem's solved, like in less than 5 seconds. So Darren thought, man, this was a really good idea, but more importantly than being a really good idea, this is an idea you can sell. So he went on to go do that. But before we talk about Darren again, let's talk about the device itself. To reiterate on our previous line of questioning, what do you think is the worst thing a malicious keyboard can do to your computer? If you were to plug in a flash drive that was actually a keyboard and it came pre-programmed to do a bunch of stuff really quickly, what could it do? I mean, a better question is almost to ask, what can't a keyboard do, really? I mean, computers were invented with keyboards before they were invented with mouses. To some extent, you can use every part of a computer with just a keyboard, if you know how. Even the latest version of Windows is completely keyboard compatible, or at least they're trying to be that way. So then the other question is, if you really had a microcontroller that could type that quickly, how long would it take for it to cause that kind of damage to your system? It is not limited by human reflexes. It can plant thousands of keystrokes before you even get a chance to react. So here are some example payloads. This was one that my IT professor would like to do anytime someone left their desk to go to the bathroom. I think this is hilarious, actually. He had a rubber ducky on his desk that was pre-programmed to do this exactly. All it would do is open Notepad and blast it with this, and it would take no effort on his part. and then when they come back, they would hopefully learn their lesson so that they wouldn't end up like Omar here. Omar was the person whose computer I stole Chrome passwords from, by the way. He's my good friend, my good roommate. May our room rest in peace. Anyways, so that's kind of for fun, but if we're getting back to being malicious, couldn't you also download a file and execute it just straight from the terminal, like wget and then something, or if you're on like PowerShell, I forget what it is, but something like that. Actually, I think wget is a valid alias in PowerShell that will like behave like wget. So yeah, just download a file and then execute it. Upload files from the computer, like if I need to steal a file off of your computer, like your Chrome passwords, plug it in, rip it out. Yes. That is a valid script that, let me guess, Matei posted that? Yeah, Matei posted that. That is an example of a script that you could basically like hide an entire program in a line of text that is typable. You can establish a reverse shell, which is basically like someone can issue commands on your computer like it's their computer. And then kind of what Matei just demonstrated in the chat is you can install complicated malware with no downloads. If that computer is being monitored for malware out and about in the system, like downloading it from the internet and then running it, you don't even have to do that because you can actually pass the binary itself as hex to PowerShell and have it execute that in the background silently where you can't even see it. And it will do that very quickly. So it's quite scary how someone can put a program on your computer through a keyboard with no real like software downloads. Like it comes with it. Anyways, yes, we will show you how to hack Canvas later. So the question is then, why this special treatment? And I'm talking about keyboards here, right? Because if you look at any other device that you plug into your computer, like say your iPhone, when you plug in your iPhone, you get this kind of question that says, hey, would you like to trust the data, or like, you know, are you sure you want, before you could do anything else, you have to confirm that this is a trusted device, right? And usually you have to like authenticate, use your thumbprint, something like that. When you plug in a flash drive, even on Windows, you get this pop-up that says like, oh, well, hold on, this is a storage medium. Are you sure you want to open this, et cetera, et cetera? But then with keyboards, why is this just implicitly trusted by all computers? There's no prompt, there's no questions. Like, don't you think it'd be pretty easy to notice if a keyboard that's literally never been plugged into the computer before is plugged in and suddenly starts typing 1,000 keystrokes per minute? Like, why is that not a thing that computers look for? Why is that not detectable behavior? I don't know. For some reason, this is still just a rampant problem. But then the question becomes, why stop there? What else can we fake? If we could fake a keyboard, there are so many devices that connect through USB. Couldn't we extend this? Here's the genius part. You can fake everything and all at the same time with one device. Because when you think about it, all the computer sees is you plugging into it. Something. But what that something is just what you tell it you are. In other words, I could plug in a flash drive that tells your computer that it's a USB hub, and it has all of these other devices connected to it. So in other words, I can have a single flash drive that can pretend to be a microphone, a camera, a keyboard, an actual flash storage. I can combine all of those things to create something incredibly deadly. I'm not going to comment on my mechanical keyboard layout right this moment. You succeeded in distracting me, though, so I'm going to take a drink. Take a drink, everyone. So you could fake keyboard, mice, storage, Ethernet. That one's actually pretty like broke when you think about it. You can plug something in and redirect all internet from that device, like through your little USB flash drive. Like, that's insane. And that is the actual link to the device. I'm actually just about to get there, Matei. I'm about to talk about the Bash Bunny. So laziness wins the day. As it turns out, just like Matei has secretly revealed in the chat, Dennis, or was it Dennis? I don't remember. Anyways, Darren, that's what it was. Darren Kitchens, Denise here went on to found a very successful company that makes hardware specifically for hackers called Hack5 because he saw the potential for this device to be used for evil, but didn't really want it to be used for evil. So instead, he sold it to the good bad guys instead of the bad bad guys, which is to say professional hackers who get paid by the government and companies like PayPal who want to keep your data safe and stuff like that. So he went on to release the very slick and slightly less inconspicuous plastic-shelled USB rubber ducky, which was to go along with the new recently editioned Bash Bunny, which is like basically a full computer on a flash drive that can do all of that USB hub type stuff that I was talking about before. And like most successful companies that sell a patented piece of hardware, the reason why they're successful is quite easy to see from their page. The USB rubber ducky will set you back about $50, and the USB Bash Bunny will set you back about $100. Which, by the way, just to put that into perspective, is ridiculous because I was planning on hosting a workshop. The version of this workshop I was going to host next was the one where I actually give you all USB rubber duckies and we program them together and we like write crazy scripts. That's going to be so fun. So make sure you're on campus next year because I will be. And the soonest opportunity I have, I will find a way to give you guys this and get AS to fund it. I'm so excited. Let's do it. All right. But obviously, I'm not going to buy 50 of these $50 devices. I don't have that kind of money, and AS isn't going to swing for that. However, you can make them for about $5 if you buy the parts and write the software yourself. So I will be doing that at some point between now and when that hands-on workshop takes place. That'll be fun. Yes, the DigiSpark works. There's also there's one you can do where it's like 99 cents too, but anyway, we'll figure that out as we go on. We have a couple of options. Really, though, we're just talking about one side of the coin. After all, this is commercially available to you and I. This technology is expensive, but not nearly as expensive as what you could make if you had nation-state level funds. You know what I mean? So then the question is, if this is freely available and cheaply mass-producible, what can you do? What kind of hardware can you make that's on the cutting edge of technology for hacking, right? In other words, if you had unlimited funds and resources, what would you make? Who even has the money to be that cutting edge? To which, of course, I answer, not me. Oh, hell, not me. No, it's these guys. Also, probably Bezos, but the NSA too. See, the difference between Bezos and the NSA is the NSA can print money. Well, they can't really, but the Treasury can, and the Treasury has in the past. So, time for a quick poll. I kind of want to get just, your honest, truthful opinions about the NSA. This isn't going to be a yes or no question. I'm just going to ask you a general question about how you feel about the NSA, and you're going to have 4 options here. Option number A is you think they don't spy on you. Option number B, you think they probably spy on you, but you have nothing to hide, so you're fine with it. Option C, they probably spy on you and you don't like it. Or option D, you are good friends with the NSA agent who spies on you. If I'm going to pose the 4-option poll. I'd like you to just boil all of those feelings you have towards the NSA agents that spy on you and kind of into a 2-bit response, A, B, C, or D. Also, I would like to say that, not that this should affect your answers in any way, shape, or form, but we do have, of course, the special guest NSA currently monitoring these responses. So choose carefully and choose correctly. I see a good 31% of you are good friends with your NSA agent, which is a great start to a long-lasting relationship. Congratulations. So we have some varied responses here. I think it is worth noting. Let me go ahead and end the poll, actually. You guys can't see that, but 0 of you responded A. All of you know they spy on you, which I think is kind of amusing. But it's good. We're all on the same page here, and I'm not going to give any particular... I'm not a narc. Anyway, I got distracted again. Damn it. No more looking at the chat. let's see here. Yes, now that we're all on the same page, let's talk a little bit about the NSA. I'm going to try to withhold my own personal opinions because we want to talk about their technology, especially when it comes to hacking. Now, what you people are most comfortable with, what you are most familiar with, is the topic of the publicly characterized 2013 Snowden leaks, right? Everyone knows Edward Snowden. He's a household name, etc., etc. But to be honest, this is one of my least favorite NSA leaks. It's not that interesting because no actual tools were leaked. Funnily enough, Edward Snowden did take tools with him, like NSA hacking tools with him, but he never published them. The people that he gave his documents to, his data to, never released it. I think like Washington Post and a couple of other publishing agencies, they never released all of the content because they, had to balance whistleblowing with like public safety and stuff like that. So, damn it, Edward Snowden is like fake. Anyways, the 2016 shadow broker leaks of NSA exploits are a little bit more interesting because now we're talking about real software like Eternal Blue that Matei has mentioned in the chat that is used for hacking. Software, though. This is a little bit more interesting, but it led to some pretty unfortunate stuff, such as the WannaCry malware attacks that held millions of computers ransom all over the world by using an exploit from these leaks, and NotPetya, which is the most devastating and costly cyber attack in all of history that no one knows anything about or talks about. I would love to hold a presentation just on NotPetya sometime in the future. So, oh, by the way, the shadow brokers were basically a bunch of probably Russian hackers that hacked into the NSA, stole their hacking tools, and then publicly released them on the internet in like 2016 on Twitter. I don't know why everything happens on Twitter, but I guess that's just the way it is. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about lulzsec. Sorry. I do have a workshop next. Then my next workshop, I think, talks about a different hacker group. Anyway, damn it. I'm going to run out here pretty soon. I wouldn't want to have to go get more. All right, thank you very much for all of you sticking around for the show. No, the leak that I want to talk to you about regarding the NSA is actually a 2013 leak of the NSA ANT Catalog. And this is actually the least talked about NSA leak. But I think it's the most interesting because, oh yeah, this is real shit. Like that last one, the ANT Catalog, that is some top tier stuff. So let's talk a little bit about ANT and TAO, because those are some really cool acronyms, but we don't know what that means. Let's do some definitions. So when I say the ANT catalog, I mean the catalog created by the NSA's Advanced Network Technology Division. Now, just to give you a quick rundown on the structure of the NSA, right? You have TAO over here, right? They're the black hat hackers who kind of like break into things with specialized tools and hardware and like, they basically like, there's a really good story where they disrupt, one of the only declassified missions TAO has ever had is when they had to protect against like ISIS militant hackers. It was kind of interesting. Maybe I'll share that story sometime. So they're the actual ones that like are drinking tons and tons of Red Bull and like 5-hour energies and like, oh, I'm hacking into here. Oh, I'm into this account. Oh, like I'm coming up with exploits on the fly. They're crazy and they are a necessary part of the edition. But I think all of you will relate more closely with the people who give them those hacks. Where do those hacks come from? They come from the Advanced Network Technology Edition. See, that guy kind of looks like me. Those are the engineers that sit behind the scenes and create the technology that TAO uses to hack. TAO puts it into action, but ANT over here is just coming up with the stuff, engineering new hacking tools. I am not single-handedly supplying ISIS. So the NSA ANT catalog. Let's go over some examples. Oh no. All right. Let's go over some examples of some of the stuff that was in this catalog. It's really crazy, actually. You can kind of think of the ANT catalog as It was most famously referred to as the Sky Mall for wiretaps, and that's unfortunately pretty accurate. Here's an example of a page straight out of the ANT catalog. This particular page is for a piece of classified top secret NSA technology called RageMaster. And we'll talk a little bit about what RageMaster does in a second. Yeah, they called it, like, there are people employed by the government whose job it is to name these things and came up with RageMaster. We'll talk a little bit about this device and others shortly. This whole catalog was up to 50 pages of espionage equipment that had been classified and they were actively deploying in the field. Although no field samples have ever been found, we know that these were engineered and they exist. It was leaked in 2013, but you'll notice in the top right-hand corner of the actual document, this document is dated in 2008, which is, you know, hate to break it to you guys, you're kind of old, that was 12 years ago. And technology changes a lot in 12 years, especially computer technology. So just imagine what they have now. Even back in 2013 when this was leaked, some of this stuff was like no one had ever thought of or seen it before. Also, they were low-key probably selling and showing this catalog to kind of our allies. Israel, definitely in the top 3 people who probably bought tech equipment from NSA ANT. And all of the documents have badass sci-fi names like RageMaster. So if you know, the tech itself wasn't enough to sell you on it, School Montana, yeah. Oh, let's talk about RageMaster real fast. So it has a bunch of tech stuff talking about it, but literally what it is a malicious VGA cable. Like, you know, the cable that goes from the back of your computer. Oh, I'm being told to drink. Damn it. All right. It is a malicious VGA cable that goes from the back of your computer to the back of your monitor. How often do you, like, I don't know, go back there and like scan it for like malicious hacking, like sniffer tools back there? You know what I mean? So it requires physical access, but what it does is you'll be in like a hotel or something in like Iraq or something, and you're like a terrorist. The military NSA TAL people will like break into your house while you're gone, and they will replace your cables with like these RageMaster sniffing cables, and then they will sit across the street and they are able to wirelessly look at what your screen is displaying because of this cable, which is very insane. Like, I've never seen that before in my life. No, we're not vibing in any hotels in Iraq. Here's an example of Nightstand. This thing is insane. God damn. Nightstand, a little bit less cool and hackery, just kind of sounds like something I would kind of want on any kind of hotel trip or something. You can see that, like, if you actually read this, like, just look at the last paragraph. It hacks Wi-Fi. It wirelessly hacks Windows 2K, Windows XP, Windows XP Service Pack 1, and Windows XP Service Pack 2. If you are running one of those Windows machines and you are running Internet Explorer and they can get within 8 miles of you, you can be totally hacked. Which is, I've never seen anything like it. It must be like radioactive or something to like throw a signal that far, but they just, hack is undetectable by the user. That's insane. And apparently it runs on Fedora. Anyways, here is a special processor that the NSA created called Trinity. It's basically a microcontroller before microcontrollers were a thing. It's a tiny little component that they would use in some of their more advanced sniffing tools that need like a brain, like a processor in it. But it fits on the head of a penny, and it can do crazy stuff. Like, it's, if you look at the specs there, it's not bad. But for 2008, this was like next level. I mean, look at that that cost there down in the bottom right-hand corner. It was about $6K per chip, per individual chip, which means if you want, and also they had a minimum order of 100 units, which means you had to put out $500,000 as like a start. Here's something called Cottonmouth. It's not a USB flash drive. It is a USB cable with a hardware implant inside of it. It actually uses Trinity inside of it to basically monitor all the data going across that connection and then beam it to NSA agents listening to you across the street. So it's just, they have tons of these like cutting edge, you would never know. You would never be able to detect these things if you weren't specifically worried about being tracked by a nation state. You know what I mean? I mean, realistically, if technology like this was being put into every USB cable ever produced in the United States, we still probably wouldn't even know. But we'll not get into that territory. That's like hardcore conspiracy theory territory. Also, look at some of the acronyms they talk about in this page. Straight, bizarre, chimney pool, howler monkey. These things are hilarious. Oh, firewalk. This is interesting. I actually don't remember what this is. Oh my goodness. Okay. Oh, yeah, it's a wiretap. It is a USB wiretap. They can monitor your network traffic from across the street, and it costs about also $500,000 starting price. So yeah, a lot of this stuff, it is a wireless Ethernet wiretap, that is correct. A lot of this stuff is insane, and you'd never be able to defend against it. I didn't get distracted. No, I was... Okay, now I'm getting distracted, but I was just addressing a question that was about the topics. Okay, this is just turning into every time I look at chat. I'm not going to look at... No, it's not empty. It's not empty. There's a little bit, tiny bit. All right, now it's empty. So from now on, I'm going to have to drink from the hydro, which is like the crazy stuff. The agua. You'd never be able to defend against most of this stuff. All of these are virtually undetectable. Just look at this. Now, this one is by far the one in the whole 50-page catalog that scares me the most. And honestly, if I were you, I'd be scared of something that's called Irate Monk. What it is it's a piece of malware, but it's not a normal piece of malware. It's a piece of malware that hides on your hard drive, but not on the actual hard drive part of the hard drive. It hides in the firmware of the hard drive itself. And if you don't really know, also it says unit cost 0. It's purely, this is software. This isn't like a hard drive that they swap out with your hard drive, and the hard drive they swap you out with has got like bugs and sniffers in it. They literally can install malware on your computer such that it isn't anywhere on the hard drive, but it persists every time you boot your computer. So just to give you a little bit of an analogy about how this works, here's a normal hard drive, right? And you have good data coming in and good data coming out of it. And if you have a virus anywhere on this computer, it's not a huge deal because you can definitely detect it, right? Like it's going to poison the good data coming out, and you're going to get bad data. But you can also see it. It's right there on the disk. Like you can scan your hard drive, find the malware, and remove it, right? But let me walk you through the Irate Monk scenario, because the truth is there's more in a hard drive than just the storage space that you can access. There's also a place for the hard drive firmware to go, because hard drives are internally very complicated and are almost themselves computers. That is where the malware of Irate Monk is hiding, on the firmware of your hard drive. And what they will do is it still manages to poison all of the data going through the hard drive, but when you go to look for it, you can't see it because you can't even look at that part of your hard drive. This part, this scares me so much. Anyone who knows about malware is deathly terrified of this, because there is no way to detect something like this. Yeah, basically you're up shit creek. That's what that question mark means. Moving on. So the question is, when the ANT catalog was leaked onto the internet, how did this change things? Well, the truth is, Mr. Denise over here caught some great ideas. Some of these pieces of top secret, $1 million NSA technology have been appropriated by Mr. Denise, Mr. Darren Kitchens, and has now been widely available. So for example, this is this is kind of like RageMaster. It is a video cable wiretap. It is obviously not as compact or as discreet as what you would get from the NSA, but it also only costs like $90 instead of $900,000. So Oh, actually, it costs 150. Never mind, that's way too much. Then you have this over here. This one's actually a little bit more impressive because this is what's referred to as a demon seed cable, or an OMG cable is something it's also referred to. You could buy this for as little as 130 bucks. And if you look at it, it is pretty much indistinguishable from a real cable. You would totally fall for this. Don't say you wouldn't, because you would. Oh yeah, that's the problem. So again, an important thing to keep in mind when comparing the price of this to Cottonmouth, which sells for like $1 million, is that obviously 2019 technology is a lot different than 2008 technology. Although it's 2020 now, so maybe I should change that date. And if you don't want to get shafted by either the NSA or Darren Kitchens, you can instead invest in the NSA Playset Project, which costs you nothing. It is literally just a set of instructions that are publicly available and online to create your own versions of these tools. For example, Turnip School, I believe, is like a fake version of Cottonmouth that you can make at home. Like all of the names of them are like, they tell you everything you need to make it. They walk you through exactly what you have to do in order to make it. People have their own PCB schematics that they published. You just have to make them and then connect everything together. Like all of it's open source. So it's really only about 20 bucks between you and making one of these super discreet, super high-tech snooping tools. Here's the actual picture of it. And, you know, it's not as slick as what you get from the Demon Seed, like the very iconic Apple-style cable connector that probably violates some patents. This one, though, is still plenty convincing. I would not be able to detect this in a million years, and I would get totally wrecked by it. So, quick question. Time for a poll. And I'm not distracted because I'm looking at you guys because you have to do this poll. Does anyone know what this is? Just say yes if you know what this is. Don't say what it is. Say yes if you know what this is, and no if you don't know what this is. Uh-oh. We have 2 people who know what this is. 4 people, 5 people. Damn it. 6. All right. Lecture's over. Forget this. Most of you know what this is. All right. I had 11 respondents. That's most of us. Okay, a good 54% of us are familiar with this piece of technology, which there's a very good reason for it, but I will get to that in a second. Please don't admit to doing anything in the ACM live chats. That is not going to be helpful. No, I didn't get distracted. I was still doing the poll. All right, whatever. I'll take a drink because I'm thirsty, not because you told me to. All right, let's keep going, dudes. So, for those of you who do not know, this is the most important thing that we could talk about if we're talking about technology that is used for hacking. This is the most famous device in all of hacking hardware. It is called the Wi-Fi Pineapple. It is basically a malicious Wi-Fi access point, a router, that your devices connect to, and when your devices connect to them, they are exploited in various ways. This is what it actually looks like. It is not pineapple shaped, and I couldn't tell you why it's called a pineapple, but there it is. It looks a little suspicious, but it's pretty discreet. Again, arguably the most famous hacking hardware. And part of that is owed to, this is what you get when you buy it. It comes with like all this branding and stuff. And yeah, it's kind of slick. Carrying case. I think that's the nano version, the small version, but super slick, super small, super compact. A lot of people know what it is through its featured appearance on the show Silicon Valley. I think I haven't really seen that show, but I watched that episode for the purposes of giving this discussion. Yeah, a lot of people have seen Silicon Valley. It's a good focus. Anyways, it's a good example of the Wi-Fi Pineapple in action. So question time, and this is not poll-based. This is just general questions. In lieu of what we have posed before, what is the worst thing that a malicious access point could do to your computer, just theoretically? And I'm looking at chat because I am looking for read all your banking info and passwords. Possibly. Steal all your data. Snoop traffic. Everything. All good points. Give you some bad stuff. And then a better question would be, how would you stop something like this? How would you prevent yourself from falling victim to this? And we'll go over that too. We're not leaving that as an open question. So let's go over the different sets of features inside this device to really give all of us an idea of what kind of damage this thing can do. And then we can talk about how to avoid getting owned by it. So its first tool under its tool belt is the deauthentication attack. It can force any device that isn't even connected to the pineapple. It can force you off of your existing connection. So here's an example diagram. Here's your phone. Here's your device that you aren't even using. It's in your pocket, but it's connected to some Wi-Fi, let's say, right? And here's a normal router that your device is connected to. So both of these are trusted devices. And I come along, and you're sharing like data back and forth. The good data is blue, right? I come along with my Wi-Fi pineapple. It is orange for clarity of malicious intent. And it is sending what is called a deauthentication packet to the bad router, or to the good router. Now, it's not just sending it to the good router and saying, like, deauthenticate me. It is pretending to be the blue phone. When it sends the deauthentication packet, what the blue router sees is it gets a packet that looks like it's from your phone, and it's saying, I would like to log off of this Wi-Fi, right? So when the blue router gets that, it says, okay, I will deauthenticate you. And now when the phone tries to talk to the blue router, the router's like, nope, you're deauthenticated. You can't continue talking to me. Whatever you are doing is null and void. You are now off of the Wi-Fi. And then from there, you can do some shady stuff. You basically get a response that says, you are not authenticated. You have to re-authenticate. So that is the first attack that we have available to us. This is possible on any kind of Wi-Fi network. There is no Wi-Fi network that is immune to this. There's a type of encryption or security that will prevent you from getting deauthenticated. And it's very annoying, right? And it leads well into more attacks. That's the main purpose, right? This is really just annoying. But there's a lot of ways that you can pivot from getting someone off of the Wi-Fi they're usually on, because then maybe that means you can get them onto your device instead. So let's talk about Karma, which is the second attack that a Wi-Fi pineapple is capable of. Karma is a process in which any Wi-Fi device that enters the range of your pineapple will automatically connect to it, even if it's never connected to that device before, which when you think about it, how is that even possible? I mean, normally when I want to connect to a Wi-Fi network I've never been to before, I have to go into my phone and click it and like type in the password. But with Karma, the pineapple can disguise itself in such a way that your phone just willingly connects to it. And the sad thing is Wi-Fi isn't exactly the gold standard in secure protocols. It's not even hard. The attack isn't complicated. Here's a quick diagram of how this process works. Here's your phone, the good phone, it's blue. And here's the pineapple. Let's say we just performed a deauthentication attack and knocked your phone off of its original Wi-Fi. Well, then your phone's going to go around looking for new Wi-Fis, right? And here's how we would imagine the ideal protocol for that would be. This is surely what happens when your phone connects to a new wireless access point, correct? Let's see. So your phone says, hi, I'm looking for networks to connect to. The Wi-Fi point says, hi, I'm this network. Here's my certificate, my proof that I am a very unique network in a sea of networks. And then the blue network would just be like, sorry, I've never connected to you before. And that would be the end of the conversation. There would be nothing else, right? It is up to the blue phone whether or not it wants to connect. So surely that is how Wi-Fi protocol works. I'm here to tell you that unfortunately we live in a reality where this is how it works. And this is what the Wi-Fi access point, the pineapple, can do. Your blue phone says, hi, I'm looking for networks to connect to. The pineapple says, hi, I'm a network. Doesn't identify itself, just says, I'm a network. Your phone then explicitly asks, oh, are you my home router? Your phone provides a certificate of what the home router looks like. And then the Wi-Fi pineapple says, sure. Yes, I am who you think I am. It's like the phone's asking, can I trust you? And the router says, yes, you can trust me. And then it just believes it. And then you're pwned. That's it. That's all it took. There's really no complexity in this attack whatsoever. It is astounding that the process for this is so bad. So now let's talk about attack 3. Now that we've booted you off of your original Wi-Fi, gotten you onto our malicious Wi-Fi, what can we do from there, right? Well, we can control all the traffic that's passing through the router, all of the information you're sending and receiving. We can't read or modify HTTPS traffic per se. We can do something called SSL split, which is a way to kind of perform manipulations of HTTPS traffic. It's hard to talk about. So, I'm getting distracted. Oh, yeah, I got distracted. I heard you talking about like deleting someone's comment, and I was worried that someone posted something. But yeah, I might actually have to kick trash out of here after that message. I actually don't think I can delete messages. I mean, what? No, I can delete messages. No, I can't delete messages. Don't take advantage of that, please. Drink up, my bros. So SSL split lets you kind of intercept traffic. It doesn't let you read the traffic that was going to the server, but it basically lets the router knock you off of your existing HTTPS connection and kind of pose as a secure connection to that same site. And your device, of course, has to believe it, because the only way that it can verify that is by talking to the router itself. Like, it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. It's not great. It's very specialized. It's only useful in specialized situations. You can't generally read HTTPS traffic, which is nice. And you can always, regardless of whether or not they're using HTTPS, you can always execute a phishing attack. That is always trivial. So, for example, if you were using the internet, right, at UCSD, and you suddenly got this message on your phone, it said, sign in to keep using Wi-Fi. I mean, would you think twice? Wouldn't you just put in your username and password? But how do you know you weren't intercepted by a Wi-Fi pineapple? How do you know that you weren't deauthenticated, connected to the pineapple, and then it showed you this prompt and is now going to just take your information, your login information, and use it to like change your grades? Now, granted, with Duo, it is a little bit more difficult to do this. You have to make, it's not impossible. You can still, like, you can make basically a man-in-the-middle attack that fakes the Duo prompt. It literally will pop up, like, you know, accept the push request, and you have to, like, accept it and stuff. Like, there's a million and one ways to trick people. And truth be told, having someone's username and password is still incredibly valuable, regardless of whether or not you have the ability to fool Duo. So, let's keep moving on. Let's talk about what you can do to fight back against being a victim of something like this. Number one is, of course, use a VPN. If you use a VPN, you are basically immune. Bar any very specialized pineapple software, if you use a VPN, you're pretty good. Like, you're tunneling your traffic in such a way that you can be pretty guaranteed that it isn't being snooped on or changed or modified. Number two is always check for HTTPS. If you get downgraded from HTTPS to an HTTP version, be a little bit suspicious of that, because that could be a pineapple. That's part of that SSL split that I was talking about earlier. Use public Wi-Fi with skepticism. Every time I walk into a Starbucks and I automatically connect to Google Wi-Fi, I get very upset because I don't want to be connected to Wi-Fi without being asked, but it just happens. So that sucks. And just for fun, that was all I wanted to say about the Wi-Fi pineapple. I want to talk a little bit about some other hardware that isn't necessarily useful for hacking, but it's interesting. Take a look at this. What is wrong with this? Now, I know most of us here are good with computers. Good, air quotes. Most of us are fairly proficient with computers. And if we saw a cable like this, we immediately know what it is, and we think it's ridiculous. But you and I also both know that if I gave this to your grandma, she would plug her computer into it and fry it. Hell, if I gave it to people from your work, they'd probably plug it in and fry it. I know several professors who have PhDs that if I gave this cable to them, they would plug it in and fry their computer. So no one is immune to this. The most important thing to know is that even if it's obvious to you, this is a legitimate threat to some people. if your goal is to destroy things. So just to clarify, this is, of course, an Ethernet cable on one end and a power outlet on the other. If you plug a power outlet directly into the Ethernet port of your computer, it will almost definitely fry your motherboard and destroy the physical hardware your computer runs on. So, don't do that. Yeah, this is a good illustration of what happens when you do this. It's like mostly a joke. It's mostly a joke. It's a joke piece of equipment. Realistically, the goal of destroying hardware isn't that useful unless you're like a nation state and you want to like set back ISIS or something. Like there's a couple of good stories on that where they like went in and just fried computers as quickly as possible. And they had to come up with ways like, what is the best way to fry a computer as quickly as possible? As it turns out, thermite cannon is pretty effective. Don't try that at home. Then we have this. Similar vein. This is a USB flash drive. Does anyone know? Can anyone imagine? Okay, Eason already knows. Eason knows that what's inside of here is a capacitor. Specific, we've got like 5 huge capacitors in here that when you plug it into your computer, they will slowly build up charge inside of them. And it only takes about a second. And then it will discharge it back into the computer at a way higher voltage, negative 215 volts, directly onto your motherboard and fry it. And this is a little bit more suspicious because, to be honest, if someone handed me this and told me it was their lab report, I'd probably plug it in, probably into like a school computer before I plug it into my computer, but I'd probably plug it in. And it would fry that computer. It would destroy the school computer. It would destroy my computer. There's so many videos on YouTube, like it's famous rich YouTuber things where they'll go and buy one of these and just plug it into really expensive things and see what happens to it. Like they plug it into a MacBook and it actually doesn't break the MacBook, but it does fry the port so you can't use it anymore. They plug it into like smart TVs that have USB ports in them. One guy plugs it into like a BMW and you just hear it like go click, 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 click from like discharging all that energy. There's a couple of other ones. So yeah, I'm actually going to post a series of links after this presentation that kind of shows some of like, I think one of the links is like a link to a YouTube video where like USB killers fry a bunch of devices. Anyways, I forget what's on this slide, so I have no introduction for this. Let's just hit next. We just finished the hacking hardware section of this workshop. Now I would like to talk about the hardware hacking part, which is, again, the secure systems engineering part of hardware hacking, where we talk about systems that are built to be secure and what was done to either circumvent or make them stronger, etc. That's the general topic. And I'm going to take a drink, not because I got distracted, but because I'm thirsty. I encourage everyone to just take like a good 10-second break here as we pivot. I think a lot of MacBooks, I think what happens is if you use the USB killer on it, and a lot of devices this way, you'll destroy the power part of the USB, but you won't destroy the data. So you can still actually transfer data through that port. You just can't like charge your phone with it. So it's actually not even that convenient, not that inconvenient because I don't know, I don't really charge my devices that way. But that was a consideration on Apple's part. Most laptops are not engineered that way. Pick up a Lenovo, it will explode if you plug one of these things into it. Anyways, let us keep going. On to the new topic, right? So, speaking of Macs, we are now going to talk about how to hack a Mac. This part of the presentation, of course, is going to be very short because we all know that you can't hack a Mac. Macs are completely immune to any and all software and hardware exploits, and they are perfectly engineered pieces of technology. They are the peak of humanity's achievements, and yeah, there's no way to hack them. That's it. That's actually the end of the presentation. That's all I really wanted to talk about. Mac is the most secure device. Everything should look up to it. No, I'm kidding. That, you have to admit, though, we've all heard that before, right? Like, maybe not recently, but like back in 2010, maybe you had a teacher or a relative who said like, oh, you know, like, I don't use Windows because Windows get viruses, or maybe your grandparents still say something like that, but it's ridiculous. Of course, macOS is no less insecure than any of its counterparts, such as Windows. To showcase this fact, I love to talk about this. This is my favorite bug in all of computing. All of computers, Windows, Mac, Linux, you name it. This is an actual bug in macOS at some point in macOS's history. Here's the bug. You ready? The bug is if you go to log in as root, if you leave the password empty, it lets you in. That's the bug. That is a real bug. And you'll notice the UI is really recent on this. This is a recent version of macOS. This is real. And if this happened once, that would be one thing. November of 2017 is how recently this was a bug. Hold on. I just have to think about this for a second. Because, how do you not have that problem? How do you go from not having that problem to suddenly introducing it in 2017? You accidentally make it so that a password is not necessary to log into root. How do you even do that? Anyways, I'm not going to hang up on that too much. Or maybe I will, because they actually accidentally did it a second time less than 3 months later in a separate part. The only difference is that instead of logging you into root with no password, it changed so that you could log in to any user with any password, and it would just unlock. And there was nothing it just worked. Didn't matter. You could log in as any user and any password, and they did that in 2018. And you can look at these. You can look these up online. I'll actually post the links afterwards to the articles about these. These are real bugs in macOS. I love Mac. So anyway, I'm not going to rag on Mac for too long. My point is everybody's got problems. No one's immune, right? macOS and using it does not give you permission as a user to be careless, right? Most systemic security issues that are infamous in Windows have some parallels in macOS. DLL injection is a whole field of research in Windows exploitation. And of course, macOS has something called dynamic libraries, or dylibs, that are actually vulnerable to the exact same type of exploit. Thread injection in Windows is, you guessed it. Literally, you can do the exact same thing in macOS. Even if you don't know what these things are, just know that anything that can work on Windows can probably be retrofitted to work on Mac in a similar way. The only difference is that, yes, Windows has a little bit more attack surface area, so it tends to be targeted more frequently. Oh, yeah, and if you thought that Chrome trick I did earlier on Omar's computer was funny, you could do that on Mac as well. Only instead of stealing your Chrome passwords, you just plug it in and it steals all of the passwords on your entire Apple computer that is stored in the secure keychain. And they still have not fixed that to this day. So that's fun. Now, while we're in Apple land, let us talk about the most important piece of technology that has been created within the past 2 decades, right? The one phone that rose from the ashes to rule them all. The most important piece of technology that changed each and every one of our lives. That's right. It's the Windows Phone. Okay, I'm actually talking about the iPhone. But not that version of the iPhone. Not gonna lie, that version's kind of ugly. I'm talking about this one right here. Yeah, it used to look like this for some reason. In case you forgot what bezels were living in the 21st century, boom. Just look at that. Oh my God. Man, they don't make them like they used to. Man, I can't believe it used to look like that. Okay, sorry, I got distracted. I'll take a drink. I'm drinking. Okay. So this was all the way back in 2008, fun fact. Actually 2007, excuse me. I tried to memorize that date and I failed. Back when the iPhone came out, it was actually a pretty minimal device. It had no 3G. You had to connect to Wi-Fi. It had no Apple Store at all. You couldn't install new apps. And it basically had no security whatsoever. Which is so interesting because now we consider the iPhone to be this one of the most high-tech, secure pieces of technology in existence. But when it came out, it basically had nothing. It had no apps other than the stock. You couldn't download new apps. You could download songs. You could download like videos that play at like 1 frame per second. But other than that, it was very basic. It was also pretty fat. And notably, which we'll get back to later, the only carrier you could have on the phone originally for like 5 years was AT&T. Now, of course, you can have Verizon, T-Mobile, Sprint, all of them. But back at the original version of the device, it was AT&T only, and that is important. So time for a poll. Have you ever jailbroken an iPhone? I'm interested to actually see how many of us have experience with this. Ooh, okay. A lot of no iPhone users here. I've only ever had an iPhone, so. The Knox era. I think the first iPhone I jailbroke was my iPhone 3GS. That's how old I am. All right, it looks like about 50% of us said no, and about 25% of us said yes, we have jailbroken an iPhone before. It's not a big hacker process. It actually is kind of intuitive and easy. To answer your question, Matei, no, I do not currently jailbreak my iPhone anymore. It has less to do with the difficulty of jailbreaking it and more to do with the decreasing marginal value of jailbreaking the iPhone. You know what I mean? But I'll get to that in a second. That's actually part of my presentation. So let's talk about this. So here's a rocky start. When the iPhone first came out, does anyone know how long it took in time for the first iPhone to be jailbroken? Does anyone have any idea? A month. Less than that. 7 days. It's more than 7 days. 1 day. Hey, Eason, you can't give it away. It's 11 days exactly. The first person jailbroke the first iPhone in 11 days. And he was this guy, actually. He was a kid. I think he was maybe 16 when he did it. Yeah, your man, George Hotz, also known as GeoHot, which, by the way, is a badass hacker name. He went on to do some seriously great things, but back in the day, as the legend goes, he jailbroke his first iPhone with a guitar pick and a paperclip by using a guitar pick to pry the case open and then using a paperclip to short the pins on the back in such a way that he was able to jailbreak the phone. So, like, I don't know. Some people in this world are just born savants, I guess. GeoHot went on to become a very famous competitive hacker and do some other stuff. And there's also a very famous story in which back in 2007, he sold a carrier unlocked iPhone to a CEO in exchange for that exact car. Like that car. And he's like 16, right? And he gets that car for jailbreaking an iPhone. Oh my God. I did the wrong line of work in my high school years. Holy crap. Anyways, from a hobby to a science. The first people who jailbroke the iPhone were kids or hobbyists like GeoHot, where he really just wanted to do it because it seemed fun, and he was kind of annoyed that he couldn't use his new fancy iPhone with Verizon. That was literally it. The number one reason people were jailbreaking their iPhones at first was just to use a different carrier, because that was a software lock. The original jailbreaks were as trivial as Apple's security. There were no security measures in place, so it took almost nothing to actually jailbreak a device. And it is so simple, in fact, that I can even explain how it worked right now. Here's a really funny example. It used to be that the fastest way to jailbreak your iPhone, you used to be able to jailbreak your iPhone by going to a website called jailbreak.me. You slide on your screen and boom, you're jailbroken. That's how easy it was. It was like a choice you made, and it took maybe about 30 seconds to do. So don't go thinking this is something that hackers only could do. You could jailbreak your iPhone relatively easy, very quickly. Here's how this particular one worked. Originally, all file system permissions that kept your part of the phone in a jail, so to speak, the jail that keeps you from installing your own software, is in this file called the fstab file, which stands for File System Table. And basically, it's a table that looks kind of like this, that identifies the different spaces inside the device and sets different permissions on those parts of the device. So the key part of here is that you could access certain parts of the device. The second partition was data that you could read and write to, and the apps could read and write to, but you couldn't write to root. And the only way that that was enforced was in the fstab file, which is also a concept that's used in a lot of Linux operating systems. So most of the people here who have had experience in Linux will know what the fstab file is, especially if you've installed Arch Linux, because a lot of the time you have to just edit that stuff yourself. This file system table, all that was preventing you from writing to it was the fact that it was read-only mounted. But if you could get a jailbreak to run such that you could change that to read-write, boom, that is the jailbreak. 2 characters in an obscure file. You could bypass it once, your phone is permanently yours. You can write anything you want to it. That's how easy it was. But eventually, as Apple started to beef up their security in response to the jailbreaks, things started to get a little complicated. And we're not going to go into extensive depth on how subsequent jailbreaks functioned, but just know that it got a lot more complicated than this. Empire Strikes Back. Apple made sandboxing and code signing handled by the kernel, which means that it is an incredibly low-level process that you can't overwrite simply by breaking out of the sandbox itself. You have to go a little bit deeper than that. Code signing is a process by which code can't be executed unless Apple has cryptographically signed the binary itself. Apple then went on to create an extremely convoluted boot process to prevent kernel patching, because after all, if the kernel is what enforced the security, you could then just write to the kernel, change the kernel, open the phone, flash to the kernel, close the phone, you're done. However, they then created this super convoluted boot process where the first thing that boots on the device is some program that's written on a tiny piece of storage called the boot ROM. Then that proceeds to boot something called the LLB, which stands for a low-level bootloader. Then that boots an executable called iboot, which is cryptographically signed. And then that boots the kernel. So if you modified the kernel, iboot would detect it. And if you modified iboot, the low-level bootloader would detect it. And if you modified the boot ROM, then you're pretty good. But it's really, really hard to modify the boot ROM because it is read-only memory, ROM. That's what it stands for. So theoretically, it is pretty difficult to bypass this process in any way. Most software, however, generally the way that these things do get bypassed is something that the original creators had never thought of. Apple went on to implement DEP and KASLR, which I hear is nothing like ASMR, but I don't really know, to help prevent runtime exploits. Data execution prevention is a process by which the processor labels ones and zeros in memory as either spaces in memory, this space of memory is executable. You can run the code here, and this part of memory is not executable. It's basically read-only. And so what that means is a lot of user input will be put into that read-only zone, so that if you somehow manage to take control of where the computer is executing and try to pivot it to your own malware that you've managed to put into memory, it still won't execute it because it hasn't been labeled by the kernel as executable. That is data execution prevention. KSLR is something address space layout randomization, which makes it really hard to guess where things are in memory. Just adds a bunch of components and complexities to these exploits in order to actually get the jailbreak functioning. Those are pretty standard in even your desktop operating systems today. On iOS 4.0, they started to allow people who subscribed to their Garbage Mobile Me service, which, by the way, cost $100 a month, the ability to encrypt their emails. And this last point was actually the most significant thing that they did as far as security, especially for what we're going to be talking about. Because this was the very first time that Apple started to use encryption on the iPhone. Eventually, this started to spread wider and wider. encryption turned out to be the key to stopping this kind of hacking from happening, or at least slowing it down. They extended the encryption to third-party apps. Third-party apps could use the encryption part of the iPhone if they wanted to. Apple started to eventually start to just use system-wide encryption so that everything on the phone was encrypted by default, and the only way to unencrypt it is with the passcode, and we will get there later. With the addition of the biometrics that you create, right, your thumbprint is stored in a space of memory called the secure enclave, which is basically separate from the hard disk inside of your iPhone, that stores super valuable, immutable information like your thumbprint. And I'll talk a little bit about how the secure enclave works later. But they also go on to create, it's basically a super secure part of memory that you aren't supposed to be able to get to. Apple also creates a technology called the effaceable storage and its hardware security module. And these are like some big words and stuff, but all it really means is they added a bunch of security features. In fact, the number of security patches since the creation of the iPhone has quickly surpassed 500 plus. Although in the grand scheme of things, it's actually not that many. That's the amount that we know about. There could be more that they haven't even disclosed. And I believe in a private interview with some security-oriented Microsoft engineers, there's been literally millions of security-related bug fixes. Most of them automated entirely within Windows, for example. So there are definitely bigger numbers out there, but publicly documented, we have about 500 of them. So that's pretty substantial. And all for what, right? We create all this security, but to jailbreak iOS 1 only took 11 days, as we previously mentioned. Does anyone know how long it took to jailbreak iOS 2? 9. Ooh, who said 9? It's 9 days. All right. How long did it take to jailbreak iOS 3? Let's do this. 7. No, it only took 2. It took way less than that. It took them 2 days to jailbreak it. It is not a linear pattern. I appreciate you observing it. Yeah. To jailbreak iOS 4 also took 2 days, so very quick, like didn't really fix much. To jailbreak iOS 5, it took them 1 day. And to jailbreak iOS 6, do we have any guess? Any guess? Eason's got the right idea. It took 0 time because they didn't even fix the iOS 5 jailbreaks. They worked out of the box. And you have to keep in mind, in this whole process, right, they're creating more and more security features in the iPhone, and yet it feels like Apple's losing the battle here, right? Now, granted, I'm showing you data that's a little selective. In reality, if you blow up this table, right, there's 12, 13 iOSs now. If you look at the data on iOS 12, it took them 52 days to come up with this jailbreak between when iOS 12.3 was released and when they were able to jailbreak it. And it took a team and the collective research of an incredible amount of people relative to like GeoHot, like in his garage, guitar picking his iPhone into a jailbreak. We have like teams, literal dozens of people that are contributing to how these exploits work now because they have to be that complex and that sophisticated to be able to jailbreak the iPhone. So super interesting. I guess you could say in a lot of ways, Apple is still doing the right thing. Apple took notes on all of this, by the way. And I'm not talking about security. We're taking a break from security for a minute. So every time the jailbreak community came up with a good idea, Apple was very keen on incorporating that idea into the iPhone. For example, the Cydia app installing jailbreak store was before the iPhone App Store. If you wanted to install apps, the first apps were installed through jailbreaking. You couldn't install them normally. And Apple took that idea and created an app store that is admittedly slightly nicer than the Cydia installer, though that's kind of up for debate. The control center that happens when you swipe up on your iPhone used to look like this when you jailbreak your iPhone. Like you could jailbreak it and install it, and this existed in the jailbroken iPhone way before it existed in your actual iPhone. Games. The first game ever released for the iPhone was a jailbreak. It wasn't a real app. It was like something that someone had made. I forget what it was called. I couldn't pull up any pictures of it because it was too old. But I think from the description, it was like a shooting, like it was like a game of asteroids, like the old 80s arcade game. But it was different in that instead of shooting asteroids, you would shoot down like Microsoft Zunes that would come down from the top of the screen, and you'd shoot them into 1,000 pieces. And that was the first game ever on an iPhone. Although the iPhone doesn't really make that. Apple doesn't really publish that or talk about that very much. Call blocking. It used to not be a feature in the iPhone to be able to block calls. If you wanted to block calls, you had to jailbreak your iPhone and install a piece of software that would do that for you. Low power mode was a jailbreak before it was a feature in your iPhone. Not that I'm glad it's a feature, to be honest. It's really annoying. Dark mode, of course, took forever to come to Apple products. That was very healthily a jailbreak feature long before it became accepted into the general iOS feature set. QR code scanning. If you wanted to scan QR codes, you couldn't do it straight from the camera app. You'd have to install a jailbreak that would enable that behavior in the camera app. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. Now it's just baked right in, but it didn't used to be that way. Predictive keyboard, a decidedly very Apple feature, was first implemented on Android, then ported via jailbreak, and then added by Apple once people actually used it. So we have to thank the jailbreak community for almost every major feature that Apple has added to the iPhone in recent history. Like, I hate to be the person to say it, but yeah, the jailbreak community had it first, 90% of the time. Now, that said, not every jailbreak that came out was a winner. Some of them were malware. Most of them were low quality. Some of them cost money. And the number one thing that Apple always had supremacy in, Apple was the king of visuals. Apple products looked clean and polished and beautiful. It was possible when you jailbreak your iPhone to theme the iPhone, to change the way the interface looks. Let's take a brief walk through history and take a look at some of the iPhone jailbreak themes that have been available throughout the years. I'm going to start us off with something easy to digest here. Oh yeah, spoiler alert, 90% of all themes were an affront to God. Here is a theme that I found in less than 5 minutes on the jailbreak store today. You can install this on your phone if you jailbreak it today. It's definitely a visual scheme that isn't used very often anymore. You don't see this style very frequently. Here's another one. You could make your messages look like this. I'm pretty sure that's like not Comic Sans, but it kind of looks like it. Oh boy. Oh, this one I assumed this guy was like a firefighter, right? Like that has to be what it is. But like, how into being a firefighter do you have to be to like put this on your phone? If I saw someone pull this up on their phone, I would like call 911. Oh, I think this one's hilarious. This one's subtle because other than the slide bar, it is very inconspicuous. It is completely stock, except for the fact that you have to slide the car that he is very clearly fond of in order to unlock the phone. Okay, some of them were radical. Like, when I say radical, I mean, like, this isn't even recognizable as a phone interface anymore. I don't know where I'm supposed to tap on the screen to get things to happen. Like, where are my apps? This is insane. Oh, this one's good. I have no idea how this one worked. This is actually really impressive, but also, why would you want this? This one concerns me deeply. These are all fun. I love those. Anyways, that end of that intermission. We're not going to get distracted by that. No, I'm not distracted. Oh. Take a drink, guys. I probably should have taken a drink anyways. All right, that was a fun, like, little relaxing intermission. Now I'm going to talk about something that's a little bit more serious and a little bit more depressing. And this is why I wore the suit. I'm going to go ahead and put my suit jacket back on for this topic, because things are going to get a little dark. All right. Hope you're ready. And I'm not being sarcastic here. This is kind of sad. So there was a point a few years ago where Apple's behavior and actions towards securing the iPhone became a part of the public discussion. And some of you will know what I'm talking about, because in 2015, less than 70 miles away from UC San Diego, in San Bernardino, there were a series of terrorist attacks performed by an American couple who then killed themselves after the attacks. Both terrorists involved had destroyed their phones before carrying out the attacks, so that couldn't be used as evidence to track down who they'd been talking to, etc. But one work phone remained as evidence in the FBI's possession. And of course, the FBI became very invested in trying to break into this iPhone, because the phone was locked via passcode. And if you recall from the previous slides, the passcode is absolutely necessary to read the data on the phone. It is not possible to read the data on the phone without that passcode. It decrypts it, right? The entire phone's encrypted. And this started this whole big debacle between Apple and the Fed. The FBI court-ordered Apple to unlock the iPhone after they got their hands on it. But what you have to keep in mind is that just 2 years prior, the Snowden leaks had happened. And Apple had purposefully reacted by increasing their encryption to the point where they, quote, and they said this in an interview, Tim Cook said this out loud as like their official policy on security, they wouldn't be able to comply with government wiretaps even if they wanted to. And by the time the San Bernardino shooting happened, that was the case. They were not capable of getting into the phone. In fact, Apple had also just added a feature called passcode self-destruction. And so Apple denied the request from the FBI to unlock the phone. Kind of crazy to think about. Just a company can just, like, I don't know, isn't it like a court order? Can they just say no? I don't know how that really works. In any case, if something was going to happen, if that was going to be enforced in some way, the FBI backed out of that court order shortly afterwards, shortly after like a brief standoff, and we'll talk about why in a second here. So here is how the destructible, self-destructing passcode feature of the iPhone worked. And it was based on the effaceable storage. The effaceable storage is storage that is effaceable. Literally a separate storage in the phone that holds the cryptographic keys that are used to unlock and decrypt the rest of the phone. And the idea is, if this is your phone, right, and this is the storage on your phone, this is the effaceable storage. We put the cryptographic keys in there. When we read data in, we encrypt it using the key, and then store the data in the rest of the main hard drive. Before it gets to the hard drive, it is encrypted by a series of strange processes built into the firmware of the iPhone. And so if you just look at that data, you don't really have any way of reading it. And you don't have any way of reading the effaceable storage either. You can only write to it. You can't really read it. It's kind of like a black box type system. The whole self-destruction part was the idea that if you failed to enter the passcode on your phone 10 times, it would automatically delete the effaceable storage as a way of wiping the entire phone. Now, this is actually very effective, because if you destroy the key, then you really don't have any way to interpret that encrypted data down there anymore. You lose the key, you lose everything. What's on the hard drive might as well be just noise after that, right? So it's locked forever. So the FBI wanted to brute force this password, right? They wanted to just try every combination of passcodes until one came back correct. But the problem is that if they failed to enter the passcode 10 times, the storage would get nuked. So they couldn't really brute force the entire key space, the entire space of possible passcodes, because they only had 10 tries. And then the question becomes, was all this even necessary? While preparing for litigation against Apple, because that is what happens when you say no to a court order, the FBI suddenly backed off. because they had purchased an unknown hack from a third party for $1.3 million that apparently would get them into the iPhones. The phone contained no useful details, and the investigation was immediately canceled. 1 month later, Apple reportedly patched this $1.3 million hack, and it was no longer effective. So, nice job, FBI. You tried. Anyways, let's talk a little bit about this whole effaceable storage thing. Was there really no way in? Because at some point, a $1.3 million attack existed to get in. How did it work? Well, there is one workaround to this system that is theorized by people. And here's how it works. You have your iPhone, right? And you have your effaceable storage, the keys inside of it, and you have the rest of the storage on the phone is on the bottom there, right? So the way it works is you make a copy of the effaceable storage. You copy all the data in it. Then when you end up trying 10 PIN numbers and inevitably destroy the key, you could just copy it back and keep on guessing. So you made 10 attempts, it gets wiped, you copy it back, you keep making more attempts. Now this was considered by the FBI. They were apparently aware of it, and it was kind of like publicly made a big deal of like, oh, you could just do this. But they decided it was too risky. And it is a very risky operation, because if you copy the protocol where this effaceable storage interacts with the rest of the iPhone is proprietary, designed by Apple and heavily guarded. So if you don't know the right protocol and you try to interact with this chip, there's a very good chance that you will just wipe everything on it and lose the keys, which in the FBI's mind meant they could lose vital information that was on the iPhone and possibly cost lives in the form of more free-roaming terrorists, right? To add insult to injury, shortly after this whole debacle took place, a researcher demonstrated the technique on a real iPhone, publicly available, created a write-up of the results, and published it. Here's what his solution kind of looked like. He used publicly available signal analysis tools. He built the whole thing for around $90, and he brute forced it in about 40 hours on a real iPhone. However, it remains to be said that he did have a PhD in electrical engineering from Cambridge, so he definitely knew what he was doing, and this is not something that a normal person could have figured out. But could the FBI have figured it out with all their resources? I don't know. I feel like they should have been able to. Whatever. Oh, and here's a version that you could buy for a while. Someone made like a purchasable version of that device, and here's kind of what it looks like when it's all set up. You have to like pry your phone open, and you can see the counter in the corner is like making guesses into the iPhone as to what the PIN number can be, stuff like that. Anyways, now we just spent a long time talking about the security of the iPhone in a bunch of different ways and facets. But is the iPhone the only securely designed technology there is? And of course the answer is no, of course not. We have game consoles. Oh my God, the 3DS, holy crap. I'm going to talk about this next week. Please come. If you come to one workshop this quarter, come to next week's workshop. You're going to have a lot of fun. I'm going to have a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of fun. I'm so excited for this. I'm so excited. We'll talk about Switch some other time. I feel like what's amazing about the 3DS is you could talk about how totally owned it is from the ground up. You have years of history. Anyway, I'm not trying to make a discussion. Also, I got distracted, so I'm going to drink. Yeah, you can port Android on the Switch. I think after it was like 10 days after the Switch got released, someone like posted a picture on Twitter of them booting like free BSD on it or something. That was really funny. To be honest, most of these technologies are the least secure when they are first released. So the Switch was quite a bit more challenging than the 3DS, I think. The 3DS was interesting from an engineering standpoint, but it had a lot of problems that undermined its ability to be successful. We'll talk about that at a later date. Internet of Things is a great thing to talk about when talking about secure technology because of how not that it is. Internet of Things is a security disaster. I think it was 2 years ago now that like a swarm of hacked like smart toasters took down the internet on the East Coast for like 24 hours or something like that. Like the largest distributed denial of service attack ever done in all of history was like just done by like some thermostats. It's just a disaster. Most of these things are not designed with security in mind, but that's a discussion for a later date. Industry controllers, that's a fun topic. When I say industrial controllers, I mean the computers that control industrial equipment, like the assembly line at a Coke factory, or I don't know, uranium enrichment machines that like process that kind of thing and control the turbines, the centrifuges for uranium enrichment. I'm not mentioning that for any particular reason other than like Stuxnet is literally a very famous and well-known piece of malware that hacks that particular type of equipment. And one day maybe we'll do an in-depth dive of Stuxnet. Things to discuss in the future regarding hardware hacking. We have physical security. I think it'd be really fun to have a lockpicking workshop on campus where we give you lockpicks and locks, and we all just sit around lockpicking for like an hour. Let's do that. I'm dead serious. Oh, RFID is also fun. Oh yeah, Eason could probably help me with that one. We could talk about elevators, but we probably shouldn't like get on elevators. There's a very famous DEF CON talk about a guy who talks about hacking elevators. One of the people who gets on stage has like a key ring that has every firefighter key for all 50 states. So he can effectively take control of any elevator in the world, or at least in the United States. But it's like a 50-pound key ring because it's got like 1,000 keys on it. It's so funny. We'll have to maybe talk about that sometime. Talking about the security of hard drives, how to wipe a hard drive, recover data from a hard drive, mirroring hard drives, how fast can you do that? How to encrypt a hard drive. Maybe we'll talk about that. I don't know. We could talk about malware that targets hardware that is supposed to be secure, such as Stuxnet and Xcode Ghost, although I don't remember what Xcode Ghost is. I think it's iPhone malware, based on the fact that it's called Xcode. And we could also have live hands-on demos with discussed hacking tools. Oh, God. Like some of the Hack5 stuff. So rubber duckies. I'd love to get your hands on Wi-Fi pineapples. Not going to lie, we might have to go off campus if we want to do that, but it's fine because I'll be living in the Rita next year because I'm a filthy transfer student and that's where they're sending us. So, I don't know. We could just hang out in the Rita and like hack people in my building. Wait, what did I say? Nothing. Anyways, any questions? That is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for coming, staying for all 100 minutes of it. It is recorded. I see that. I'm going to stop recording very soon. Actually, before you guys go, it would be so massively helpful to me if every single one of you could fill out this poll at the earliest possible opportunity. Let me pull up the direct link to that and put it in the shared notes and also the chat. So I'm going to put it in the shared notes and I'm going to put it in the chat. It's just, you can literally put your, it's like you can fill out, like I think every field is optional. So if you don't want to spend a long time, like it's just a feedback kind of like exit poll type thing about how well this workshop went and how maybe you would like these workshops to go in the future. This is where you guys have a lot of power over what I talk about next. So just like to say thank you so much for coming, and I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. Actually, do we have any questions real fast before I wrap up here? Now's your opportunity for you to ask an incredibly compelling question. Thank you. I like that question. That's a nice question. I'm going to stop recording.